Hello, everyone. Welcome to back to the Political Owl. I've dropped the Bridgend part and I'm doing national now. I'm just checking to see if I'm live on YouTube, but for some reason it doesn't say I am. Yes, I am live. There we go. Just checking with my phone. As I said, I've dropped the Bridgend. I'm doing more national. I still do some local stuff to Bridgend where I live. I've got a guest today with me who County Borough Councillor in Bridgend. We're going to discuss the election today, and we're going to look back at the last 10 months of the Labour government, because we're now exactly 10 months since the general election. Right, I'm going to bring in now County Borough Councillor Mark John, and former parliamentary candidate at the last election.
Thank you, Lou.
How are you, Mark?
I'm good. I've had a busy day. I dug the allotment and planted the allotment. Been to see two constituents with different issues. It's been a good, productive day, if I'm honest.
Well, we're going to get on to the election, but we were together on Thursday evening for another election that wasn't included with the English ones. There was a County Borough Council seat in Bridgend.
Yep.
And we were at the count, me, yourself, and a few others. And disappointingly, our independent candidate, who Bridgend County Independent's backing, didn't succeed, came third. But Labour lost the seat and Reform took the seat with Owen Clapworthy. So congratulations to Owen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say the top three candidates, Reform, Labour, and then Reece Watkins, the independent candidate, they were all worked hard, and I can't criticise any of them.
Yeah, no, the three of them worked hard. Yeah,
there were four other candidates, or three other candidates, and they were just paper candidates, which I think is it's not fair on the electorate. You put somebody up, at least try and work for the vote if you're going to put yourself up.
If I can come in there, Luke, I think a lot of this is due to the fact that the three paper candidates were, if I'm not mistaken, Plaid Cymru, Lib Dem and Conservatives. What that gives them is a list of the electoral votes because they're a candidate. So that gives them an insight for future reference, if that's my thought.
Yeah, I will say there was another candidate, Green Party, as well.
Sorry, yes, yeah, Deborah Cooper was there. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I've got, but it was quite a shock because that's been a Labour seat for. I know the wards merged, but primarily it's been a Labour seat for a long time now, and it was an unseating of Labour, which is, I suppose, when we come on to the election results in England, is going to be indicative of what's happening across the country.
Yeah, and as much as the talk, because I've done a lot of canvassing with Reece, to be fair, and he was a fantastic candidate, I'd have to say. But the talk on the doorstep was positive in the respect that it was, we've got to get Labour out. And that was the talk on the doorstep in a massive Labour area. You know, that would be a massive stronghold. So the way I'd look at it, it wasn't ours to win, it was theirs to lose.
Yeah. And I think the biggest shock for me on the night, maybe not Reform winning, was Labour coming second with the amount of votes they actually got.
Yeah.
Considering what was said on the doorstep, the national feeling as well.
I think the interesting thing as well is when you look at percentages. I think did Labour drop something like 32% and independents? I think we lost about 1.8% of the vote from last time. And Labour dropped about 32%, which is staggering.
It is, but I'm not going to knock Labour. They did work hard during the election.
Oh, they did. They did.
They were out knocking doors, as they always are when there's an election on.
Yeah.
They got a big group of people. They were bringing in Stephen Kinnock to knock doors as well. The leader of the council, Sarah Murphy as well, the Senate member for Bridgend. She was out knocking doors as well. So they did work hard and they did throw a lot at it for a county borough council seat. It's quite indicative to me is when they brought Mark Drakeford down to Aberkenfig to try and win that, and they ended up losing that to Ellie Richards. Cymru, which is a shame. She's not a Canterbury councillor now, which is a big shame because lovely young lady. But so you know her personally very well. You've known her family for a long time. Anyway, shall we get on to the surprising thing of the week, which I'm saying is not Ed Miliband with his guitar instead of a bacon sandwich trying to... I don't understand why politicians are doing this. Ed Davy's doing it.
Ed Davey, I don't know why he thinks he's such a stunt man. I really don't get it. But there we are.
I understand trying to connect with the youth, but even politicians, you expect them to be a little bit humble.
Yeah.
But you expect them to be quite professional as well.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I think we should turn to Runcorn and Welsby first, the by-election.
Yep.
Where Mike Amesbury did eventually resign. He was facing a recall petition because he was convicted for assault and GBH. This was a Labour seat. It had a majority of over 14.5%.
Yeah.
Which is, but on the night they had to have a recount.
Was it something like the 67th safe Labour seat or something like that?
It was the 76th most safe Labour seat.
Oh, wrong way round. Sorry,
Yeah, 76th safest Labour seat. So there's only 75 safer than that.
Yeah.
Which, as we'll go into more analysis, it will show how big a turn that was. But at the end of the day, it was won by 6 votes, which
I think you can look back and say that Reform won it twice because they won it by 4, then they had a recount, then they won it by 6. So they probably won it twice in all honesty.
But we were talking about this on... Oh, no, we weren't talking about this. I was watching an old video of Bridget Political Owl. Those videos are still available on YouTube. It was right after the election night, and it was the story of Cody Hires.
Yes, Alan Watson, yes.
And Amanda, Labour asking for a recount, and Amanda goes, yeah, go on, we'll beat them twice.
And it happened.
Yeah, it happened. And it increased the votes as well. The number of votes they actually had. But yeah, it was... I suppose a lot of people were expecting it in a way. But it was only 6 votes, which is the closest by-election in history.
Ever. But the other thing, and I know it's a by-election and it was well broadcast, but you need to look as well and take into account the low turnout, which, to me, if you don't vote, don't complain.
Yeah, it went from 59.6% to 46.1% of turnout, which is still not bad, to be honest.
It's not bad, but less than half the electorate couldn't be bothered to vote.
No, but I suppose as we talk about Labour later, the Labour government, it's not really surprising. I think, to be honest, you probably thought more people vote with the strength of feeling of what's been going on.
Yeah, because I think there were 15 candidates altogether, weren't there?
Yeah, there was a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
A lot of candidates. And Conservatives, I think, came third with just over 2,500 votes.
Yeah.
Quite a long way behind the others.
Expected, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't even fair, really, I suppose you say. Biggest cheer of the night was Monster Raving Loony Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was good, and he was stood right front centre next to the Declaration.
Loved his hat.
Yeah, he is the current leader of the Monster Raving Loony Party. Took over from Screaming Lord Sutch in 1999. But yeah, it was strange. But this puts into jeopardy now. If we had an election Monday and the same trend followed across the UK, they would lose Wes Streeting, they would lose Angela Rayner. Keir Starmer would be a very marginal seat. His own seat would be very marginal because he lost 17.5% of the share of vote from the previous election.
What would Bridgend be then if you've done your numbers?
Bridgend, he would actually be safe. He'd have a 6% to 7% cushion.
All right.
Chris Elmore would, because he won by 28.7% of the vote, if I remember correctly, going back 10 months.
Yeah.
Yes, but they would lose. They would be down to roughly anywhere between 75 seats to 100 seats. And that's a big drop off in 10 months of a brand new government.
40 or something at the moment?
Sorry?
Are they 440 or something like that at the moment?
411.
411, sorry.
They did have, I think it's about 421 or slightly more originally, but some got suspended because they voted against lifting the two-child tax benefit. And some got suspended for voting against the winter fuel payments. One is currently under investigation for child pornography and child sexual assault, which was Jacob Rees-Mogg's old seat, who got ousted at the last election. So there could be another by-election coming there. And then Mike Ainsbury, was suspended up in Runcorn for punching that gentleman and saying, "You won't disrespect an MP now, will you?"
That's right.
Which is very silly.
Well, it's not silly, is it? It's not silly. You can call it many things, but I think silly is very, very light way of putting it, Luke. You know, and you know everybody's got a smartphone. Everything's recorded, and certainly not silly. It's reckless.
Yeah, I was saying it's silly because everybody's around smartphones. You've got CCTV everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a massive possibility it's going to be captured on camera at some point.
Of course it is.
So, anyway, shall we bring up the election results for the council seats and the mayoral elections? I can't say that word.
Mayoral, yeah, whatever. I know what you mean, Luke. Go on. You.
Yeah, here we go. We'll pull it up, and we've got it here. Can you see that, Mark?
I'm
probably not.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we've got the council elections. There were 1,600 and some odd seats. I can't remember the exact total, but roughly around there. So this was always going to be a bad night for the Conservatives because they had nearly 1,000 seats anyway that are up for grabs. They eventually lost 674, which you'd say would be devastating under normal circumstances. But we know they're rebuilding now after getting trounced at the last general election. So they were always going to lose a lot regardless, because 2021, when these last elections were held, it was a high for them. It was an all-time high.
Oh, they were flying.
Yeah, they were flying under Boris Johnson, and during COVID, there was a lot of goodwill towards the Conservatives. Anyway, so as we see, Reform were the big winners of the night, 677.
If I can come in on that, the one thing that really surprised me and still surprises me is the major gains of the Lib Dems. I just don't see what they are going to do or what they're doing, even in the general election. I'm just still baffled.
The only thing, I don't know many of their policies. I think they've got a good social care policy, because they're big on that with Ed Davey, and he's got disabled children himself, and there's a lot of care in that. But apart from that, apart from the clowning around that he does quite a lot, I don't understand what Lib Dems are really for, apart from wanting to overturn what the Supreme Court ruled on a couple of weeks ago, that male means men, biological men, and female means biological women.
I don't think we want to touch on this. It's been voted on.
Yeah, I'm not going to, but that is another one of their big things at the moment.
Or to decide what a man is and a woman is, I really don't know. But they apparently it's clarity now, and there we are. Let's move on.
Yeah. So as we say, Reform big winners. They're all going to be big winners. They're a populist at the moment. Whether they could continue that momentum become a third party in the two-party system, become a regular third party that's there or thereabouts, is yet to be seen. But there's no taking away. They are the party that's being talked about, the party that a lot of people are connecting with at the moment.
Yeah. I think people are looking at the two main parties and saying you're much the same, and we just want another outlet. And I think it's you can call it a distraction vote, you can call it a lot of things, but I think people, and I don't see the Lib Dems as an alternative personally to the main parties. They're much along the same wavelength, but I just think people are looking for another alternative. And anything you say, what I can see, what I've read, what I've looked at, what I've listened to, if you don't agree with either of the two main parties, you're an extreme right winger. What? I'm sorry, but I don't see that as factually true.
No, it's not right wing to want a better economy, to grow an economy. It's not right wing to worry about the amount of immigration, not immigration itself, the amount of immigration in this country. Where our services aren't coping, our infrastructure is crumbling, and we're adding more and more people. I've got no problem with immigration. I just think it needs to be controlled and kept to what our infrastructure can actually keep up with. And that, because our infrastructure is well behind and things like that. It's not far right, and this will probably come up later. To want something done about grooming gangs in Britain, that's not far right. Even though Keir Starmer at the start of the year, they're jumping on the far right bandwagon. It's not a far right issue. It's a common sense issue that everybody should be concerned about.
Absolutely.
And
it affects everybody.
Yeah, we'll discuss it later because Lucy Murphy, is it Murphy, has said something a bit silly the other day, and she's apologised, although I don't think it's much of an apology, to be honest. So we've seen Greens actually did well as well. They had an increase of 44 councillors up to 79. But Lib Dems did well, but as I said, they've probably got a really good ground game, and they're probably talking more local issues, and I hope they are, and I hope that's what's got them the extra 163 seats, because council elections should be about local issues. It should always be about that, but inevitably it's not.
I think you need to put into context, Luke, that county council elections are not about immigration, because we can't control immigration. It's not about central government, and it's about getting your bins emptied, getting your grass cut, about education, local education, because we set the budgets, and that's what county council is about, not immigration.
No, and potholes is another thing that's
another thing, which is important, and the key things to me. And the key things to me as a resident and a county councillor, if people can see, these are my personal thoughts, if people can see the bins are getting emptied when they're meant to be emptied, the recycling is done when it's meant to be done, the grass areas around the area are looking good and fresh and clean, the street lights are working, and the roads are in decent condition. I think if you looked after them four things, then you're not going to be far away. You've got social care, which is massive. Education, which is massive, but not everybody has got a child or in education, so it doesn't matter to them. But education, not everybody's got somebody who needs social care, so that doesn't matter to them. But the other four things generally do tend to matter to them. Like I said, bins, street lighting, grass cutting, and potholes and roads. They seem to be on the agenda of what people ring me about for referrals and things like that as well, and things that I can spot myself for referrals.
Yeah, it's the visual impact, because
absolutely
that is stuff that is visually present every day, that people can see every day. We've got one person. Oh, we did have one person joining us, but they've gone now. I thought it might be Ian Williams. He quite often used to be on my live.
Oh, yeah.
Filling up my comments, which I miss half the time. anyway, as we see that, we'll go down to the councils now, how many they picked up actual control of councils, not councillors. As we see there, Reform UK have picked up 10 county borough councils.
Yeah.
One of them being my old hometown, Stafford, where the Conservative leader was unseated by Reform. Which was pretty shocking. I watched that on the night. We can see Liberal Democrats picked up 3, which is good for them. It adds to a good night for them, I believe. But we can see that Conservatives lost 16 councils.
Yeah.
Which is a big loss, because that's normally what they're actually best at, is running councils. And for some reason, they don't seem to be at the moment. And hope maybe that's reflected in the voting. Labour lost 1. They only had 1 to lose, and they lost it. They didn't gain any. So they lost 1. Independent, there were none. Greens, none. The only one, no overall control, where it went plus 10.
Yeah. Now I wanted you to come on to that, and to me now the no overall control one to me is the most interesting, because to me it'll show you need collaborative working to get things done, whether it be budgets, whether it be motions, whatever it is. It'll show who's going to work with who and who's not going to work with who.
And I think that's especially true for scrutiny, isn't it, as well?
Absolutely.
The council. And I think, because we keep hearing Reform, we're ruling out working with Tory. You work with whoever you can get the sensible and the coalition, really, to get things done.
In the right way, yeah.
In the right way, whether they're Tory, Labour, Greens, other independents, things like that. So I think no overall control. It's gonna be hard for those councils and for the people living in those areas. But let's hope that these parties and these independents can all work together for the betterment of their communities and the county.
But the interesting thing is going to be as well, where Reform have now taken control of 10 county councils. I don't know whether councillors have switched allegiance, because otherwise you've got 10 councils with nobody with any experience whatsoever. So they talk in the talk, but now it's time for them to walk the walk.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you've got to choose a cabinet. Well, on what grounds are you going to choose a cabinet? You're going to choose a leader. On what grounds or experience you're going to choose a leader? You're going to be setting budgets. I listened to the Laura Koonsberg this morning, and I can't remember his name, but the main man in Reform.
Yousaf.
Yes, he was on, and he was going to save money by doing this, that, and the other. I'm not sure if it's Lincolnshire Borough Council. They were going to save money by looking at diversity and changing that. Well, they haven't got a diversity team or manager or anybody else. And when questioned on figures, which I can understand, he didn't have figures because they're so new into it. But I can sort of understand what they're thinking, what they're trying to do. And he was going on about FOIs. I put an FOI in, as you probably are aware, about the cost of the mayoral car. It was staggering, absolutely staggering, the cost of the mayoral car for Bridgend. Because and as he said, it's how you word an FOI, and he's absolutely right, because I think I put in something like, can I have the cost, the annual maintenance, the fuel, the wages? You put a question in, and we haven't got it, or no, it's easy to overcome an FOI if the one who's submitting it hasn't put the right information in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I remember, because he was on all the news programs this morning,
Yeah.
And he was asked this question a couple of times. And he said, it's not the fact that they haven't got DEI, it's the fact they've changed the name of them to community champions.
That's right.
Different things. So he said, we have to look at that. And then he was being quite, well, you can't fire people. No, but you can get rid of the department and absorb people into other areas to make things work if you need to make other departments more efficient and work better. And then you save the budget for whatever that they do on the community champion or the DEI or whatever it's called in these places. So we've had that, and good luck to all councillors. And I'll go back to your point about new councillors, whether they got the. He was saying as well that they're going to set up workshops for people, bringing experienced councillors to help them understand how processes work and how things are done, which I think is a good idea. And I think there should be something like that for new councillors, regardless of what party, regardless if they're independent as well. So they understand the processes better and understand how to deal with things better, because I don't know what the training's like, because you went through the training, whether you're told how to properly do something or whether there's nuances to certain things beyond what they tell you.
As you know, I sit on 2 community councils, which is the lower tier of council. But the first thing you've got to do, and the first thing you need to understand and know, is code of conduct. That's nothing comes close to the code of conduct. And then I think we had another. I'm sure there was 8 training modules altogether, which were mandatory. I'm sure there was either 8 plus code of conduct or 8 including code of conduct. I can't remember, but all of them have been done and all of them should be done. So at least you've got an understanding of your roles, responsibilities, functions of the council, your roles and responsibilities and functions, and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Yeah.
We're coming up to about just over 27 minutes now talking about that. Let's move on to, well, we're 10 months since Labour have taken control of the government and are effectively running this country. I suppose a cheeky question I can ask, can you rate Labour out of 10 for the last 10 months? If you don't want to answer it, I completely understand.
No, I'll answer it. I'm just trying to think of the way that you phrased the question. How can I rate? Right. I suppose the only way I can think is, what would have happened if the Tories had stayed in? Where would we be if they'd stayed in? And I don't believe we'd be in much a better position, personally. But then moving on from that, I don't believe they would have cut a vast majority of the winter fuel payments to pensioners. And I've been wrong before by saying they've cut all the winter fuel payments. They haven't. They've cut a lot of the winter fuel payments to pensioners.
£12,750.
Yeah, which is the tax threshold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The one thing that really bugs me, which you will question me on if I don't put this in, is the way farmers are treated. You can call farmers as landowners, you can call farmers whatever you want, but the biggest bugbear I've got is if we haven't got food security, we can be deep in the shit. With everything that's going on in the world, whether it be Ukraine, which is the breadbasket for wheat production in the world, we rely so heavily on imported food. And when we build in solar farms and wind farms on prime agricultural land and taking it away from food, we got serious issues. And I really mean that. And there's something which I always like to look for facts if I can. I've got the Welsh Government final budget in front of me. And climate change and rural affairs, they haven't broken it down, unfortunately, to show what they give into agriculture. But this amounts, which you'd say is a paltry amount, of 2.69% of the annual budget of the Welsh Government. It sounds nothing until you put it into pounds and pence, and it equates to £580 million. £580 million. And let's put this into another context. UK government want net zero, whatever you want to call it. The climate's always been changing, always will change. They want net zero by 2050. Welsh government for whatever reason, want to do it by 2030. And this is £580 million of taxpayers' money to do what? To do what?
And I can't see how our Welsh government can say we want it by 2030 because they have no control over national grid, over power, over gas, or anything like that, which is a big part of what net zero is. And this is why Ed Miliband is trying to push so hard for 2030. I understand the climate is changing. It always has. It always will. It always will. But your first basic thing is your food.
Yeah.
Before power, before electricity, before gas, before anything else, you need food.
Yeah. And just food, Luke. Not just food, but good quality, homegrown, sustainable food.
Yeah, and it's much better for the environment being local. You're not transporting from abroad on big ships and tankers with like guzzle oil and put more pollutants into the atmosphere. I understand the need. There are some big agri-farmers that own mass swathes of land. I think Isala, one of them, up north somewhere. They own vast swathes of land. I understand going after them, but going after the small individual farmer that owns a few hundred acres that is trying to get by, let's not forget, they don't just grow food. They cut your hedges on the roads. They keep them trimmed down. They don't often get paid for that. They do that as part of the land stewardship that they do. They try to create sustainable woodlands, sustainable hedges and things like that for animals and other things. And you probably
find a bit of context, Luke, just to jump in. When you talk about hedges, we've got different laws in this country. You can't cut hedges unless they're unsafe between September and the end. I think it's the end of February. That's the hedge cutting season, 1st September till the end of February, and that's for the reason for bird nesting. And nobody's got an issue with that. But what you need to remember, hedges were designated and designed to be field boundaries and animal-proof boundaries. So a hedge is not just there to look pretty; it is there for a reason, and a safety reason in a roundabout way. The only time you can cut hedges, I understand, outside that area at that time zone, is if it becomes unsafe. If and I mean by unsafe, if tractors or equipment are pulling out of a field during harvest, you're allowed to trim it. So you've got vision sprays for safety for vehicles coming out and main traffic. So it's not just about hedges. Hedges are there as field boundaries and safety provision.
Yeah, and you often find farmers are more environmentally conscious where they can be. Tractors use a lot of fuel, but it makes farming so much easier, so much quicker, so they can get things quicker to the store. Otherwise, they try to conserve the land, try to help the animals that are on the land where they can. I didn't understand why they went after farmers.
No.
It was beyond. It was like going after the winter fuel allowance without saying, we're looking at the winter fuel allowance, we're going to start tapering it as a staggered thing up to a certain amount. They just went, we're doing away with it up to this point.
And just to be technical on that, they're not totally doing away with it, Luke. It's.
I said up to this point.
No. What I'm saying is not everybody's losing the winter fuel allowance. Because I've been pulled up on it, and I was factually incorrect, but it is a lot of people. I don't agree that. I'd have to say I probably don't agree that multimillionaires are entitled to the winter fuel. I'm sure a lot of them would agree, and a lot of them would probably give it back.
To me, I think it should be cut off where the national average wages, and then if
average wage or living
national average wage.
What is the national average wage?
In Wales, it's about 24,000. I think it's 32 in England.
All right. I just look at the national living hourly income. I think it's £12.20 or £12.21.
something like that.
Yeah.
I would start there. That's the cutoff, and then work back in increments. So when you get down to, say, we're in Wales, and you get down to 20, they get a bit more. Then they go down to 16, they get a bit more. They go down to the 12,750, they get the whole lot. So they're not completely losing it, but it's showing like a means tested sort of thing.
But I think the trouble that sits with me with all of this is whether you're a multimillionaire pensioner or not, you've worked all your life. You've worked all your life.
Yeah.
Whether you're a pensioner who's just on the breadline and you've lost it, you've worked all your life and paid taxes all your life. And then all of a sudden, the rug gets dragged from under your feet. It just doesn't sit well with me at all. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I look at this factually as well. And this is one of the more annoying points to me, is when this was discussed in Parliament and voted, our local MP was the loudest cheering MP of everybody in that chamber for it.
Yeah, that
You
was,
tell me wrong.
Bridgend, yeah, Chris Elmore. Not you. You were not wrong on that at all. They never said before the election they'd do away with it.
No.
The Conservatives did say that Labour are going to do away with it. So
Yep.
they were right. And Keir Starmer said, "Oh, Conservatives are lying and lying. We're not going to do that." When Conservatives were thinking about it a couple of years ago, Labour up in arms about it.
Yeah.
And said, "Oh, you should never do this." And it was originally a Labour policy, and one Labour policy I could probably get behind: the winter fuel allowance pensioners. And most of the people they class as millionaire pensioners, as that because they've owned their house for so long, it's raised in prices.
Yeah.
They may be asset rich, but they're cash poor, much
And
like farmers.
You're going to say that's exactly the same as farmers. They're asset rich and cash poor. The farm worth 5 million, but they might go £5,000 in the bank. You know, it's. And I'm looking. I worked in agriculture for most of my life, whether being a farmer's son, worked in agricultural sales, done my apprenticeship on agricultural machinery. I got a good broad understanding of agriculture and the way it works. And you know, I'm looking at the earnings of a family farm are 1%. Now, what company would generally run at 1%? It just wouldn't work. You do it as a way of life, not as a business as such.
Yeah,
but you protect the environment.
Yeah, I'd say I've watched Clarkson's Farm. Whether you like him or hate him or that, it's good to see some of what goes on in the farm. In that first season, it worked out he earned £1.24 a day.
I think you can. It's a good watch. I'll give you that. But I think you can take a lot of Clarkson's Farm with a pinch of salt. Like he says, he earns his money on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And he's owned the farm in the Cotswold for quite some time and rented it out, and then decided that he wanted to have a play about with it, basically. So then he bought a tractor which was too big to fit in a shed. There's a lot of TV in it rather than factual farming.
Yeah, the person who was basically the tenant farmer running it for him actually retired. That's why then he decided, I'm doing less with not Top Gear, Grand Tour.
Yeah, whatever,
Grand Tour. So I'll do it, create a TV series. It's good to watch.
Yeah.
But in the third season, he decided to let Caleb do the farm, which is the fields and all that, the arable farming. And he decided to do the unfarmed, which is the hedges and deers, and he grew mushrooms as well. Which
and whatever,
Yeah. And at the end of it, they had the competition, and they came out over the year. The farmer turned 86,000, and Charlie turns around and goes, "Yeah, I need all that now for next year's."
Yeah,
because they're what do you call it? My mind's gone blank. Where you protect the crops afterwards. After you planted them, you spray the crops.
Yeah.
That they spent
on chemicals, you mean?
Yeah. They spent 76,000 that year on chemicals.
Yeah.
So if you think that only leaves 10,000 for seeds, and then everything else if they're having to do that the next year. And then they've got to rely on the weather being perfect
Absolutely. Yes.
to get the maximum they can.
But what you probably don't understand, Luke, is once the crop is ready, it's ready.
Yeah.
And when I say let's look at a crop of wheat, when it's ready, it's ready. Because if you don't harvest it when it's ready, the ears will open and grain just falls on the floor. So sometimes if it's ready and it's raining, you've got to harvest it anyway. Then you've got extra costs to dry the wheat before you send it to the mill. And that's if it's accepted by the mill to be a good enough quality. So you're in the hands of everybody except yourself.
Yeah, and it's an unusual industry where the prices of what you sell is dictated by the people you sell it to, not by the you sell it. When most industry is, this is the price we set. If you want it, you want it, and it's the market trends that take
Absolutely
it higher or lower. Anyway, so we've got the winter fuel allowance. The farmers, they backtrack, they on WASPy women as well with their pensions. They promised that they were given their pensions, and they backed out on that.
Yeah,
immigration is a big issue.
It's soaring.
Yeah, immigration is soaring. Economy has been absolutely awful. They smashed businesses as much as they can. Or beyond what they can, really. Looking
at SMEs, small, medium enterprises, when you look at the rise for a small, medium enterprise where they've raised the national insurance for employers, which is key to the wording, but it's a double whammy because small businesses generally employ people on minimum wage, which was £11.50, now it's raised to £12.20. So they've had a double whammy at the same time. They've got to pay the employees more, plus they've got to pay more for national insurance. And so you can't absorb these costs as a small business. You've got to put your price. Then who's benefiting?
Not just those two things, but then they have the Workers' Right Bill, which made it harder to employ people or harder to get rid of people, bad employees.
Even after day one.
After day one, it makes us, we're protecting the workers. Yeah, but there's going to be no workers if we haven't got businesses to employ them. And they say, we're doing well on the economy. Well, the economy's flatlined.
It's going to
from 0.6% to 0%. Okay, it went up 0.1% last month, but it's forecast to drop even more first by the OBR. Then the Bank of England said that was going to be cut by half what the OBR predicted. And then the IMF have predicted what the Bank of England said is going to be cut by half again in the next 5
years. Let me just hang on. The sun is coming through now.
Yeah, no problem. I'll keep talking. So it's not an economy that's there for business at all, and you can't grow an economy by pumping money into the private sector because it doesn't work that way. Because the private sector doesn't, the public sector doesn't build things that grow an economy. Okay, they build infrastructure and things like that, which is great, but you need the businesses that actually grow an economy. So they failed on that as well, and they're still pushing that. You've got the private schools that they've taken them out of
that,
charitable status, so they've got to pay VAT on that.
No, I'll just come in on that one, and it's quite interesting. So I sit on the board of governors of our local primary school, which I attended, and it's quite interesting the way that the figures have been bandied about, because I didn't realise till I sat in the board of governors that the head looks at figures of children being born, because it's the demographic of the school, because their funding is on the numbers. And when you look at a reduction in childbirth, it's an ongoing thing that you can see the reduction in pupils, which then is a reduction in finance for the school. And the school is now, we've had to lay a teacher off because the funding has been cut by 6% from BCBC in the last 3 years. And if you don't fund your children and your schools, What do you want? Where are we going? That's the children of the future.
Yeah, schools should be ring fenced and
Absolutely.
something that should be poured into, because you've got every great advancement in human history has come with education, even as far back as the Greeks. It's and that it's come with education. You may be able to explain this, and it may be the same in other council areas, but Labour in Bridgend, who run the council, will deny they've cut education funding. They've actually increased it. That's what they try to say, is they've increased it. But I think where they're saying they've increased it is they're saying, oh, because we're building new schools.
Yeah, that's the revenue.
Schools. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the capital budget. That's the capital budget. That's the revenue budget.
Yeah, but I've heard, I think 2 years ago when John Paul Blundell was the education cabinet member in Bridgend, we're actually increasing the education budget. Yeah, so why are schools facing 1%? I think it was 1% at the time, or 2%.
I think it's on. I'm trying to work it out. Like, I know it's 6% over the last 3 years, and it was only 1% this year. But we put a motion in to drop it down to 0.5%, which was voted against. So it must have been a 3 and a 2 before this year, or a 2 and a 3. I can't remember which way around it was, but I think it was either a 3 and a 2 or a 3 and then 1% this year. But that in the revenue budget, the capital budget is building a new college in Bridgend, is building a new school. I think you sit on the board on Coity Higher. I think they're expanding the school.
They're expanding, and they need it because they built it too small to start.
Yeah, that's the concept.
And that's part of the problem, that they built these schools too small to start with, without planning of, have we got enough kids?
Yeah.
Have we got enough spaces for kids that are already here?
Yeah.
And then, so we've got that as well. I'm not going to touch on the NHS because that's just
let me just touch on it. Let me just. And this was interesting because, as I said to you earlier, I've been digging and planting the allotment, and you get a lot of allotments speak to you. You get a lot of people who, being a county council or whatever, want to come over and have a chat, and I don't tend to get as much done as I'd like because everybody wants to stop you digging. And it was interesting to listen to one woman, and this was this afternoon, who said to me that, how did she word it? That's what it was. She's due for a hip replacement. If she went private, I think she quoted me at £16,700. But she's been on the list for quite a while, and now what Welsh Government are doing is, I'm sure she said they're sending her to Bristol to a private hospital to have it done. Well, they're trying to say we're bringing the waiting list down, but at what cost? So why have we got... This is all pre-election talk now, pre-election bluff, pre-election speak. They're sending them to private hospitals in England. And this was actually a conversation I had with a woman at the allotment this afternoon. And she actually told me it was £16,700 for a hip replacement. And then I spoke to another guy who came on to me then about cataracts. He's 3 years waiting. He's his wife's carer. He's the only driver in the family, and he's got to, if he had to pay, I think he told me that was £3,200 or £3,500, and another fella chirped in, said that's exactly what it cost me if my dog had to have cataracts removed. So I don't just go to the allotment to dig and plant. We go there, it's a bit of a surgery.
Yeah. I'll quickly touch on the NHS. What they've actually been doing in England is recategorising people. They've been not adding new people to these waiting lists, so it looks like they're going down. So I guess in some way they have gone down, but they're fudging figures as well.
Yeah.
I want to leave the last 10 minutes. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's something based on a documentary I watched on Friday. It was on Channel 4 on Thursday. It was called Groomed, but it's
called what, Luke?
Called Groomed.
All right, okay. I can guess what it is.
Yeah, but I want to concentrate more on Labour not having a national inquiry, trying to stick to a half-page report in the J report is as good enough, which I don't think it is. But what's happened with Lucy Murphy MP, who is actually the leader of the House in Parliament, what she said on Friday in an interview with Tim Montgomery. I've seen him on news programs before. He's a commentator. I think he's a political journalist. I've got the clip. Let's hope we can hear it on the sound. This is what she said to Tim Montgomery on Friday. I don't know whether you've heard this, Mark.
I haven't, no, but I'll listen to it.
This was talking about the documentary Groomed and the grooming gangs across Britain. I can't bleep. I don't know how to. There is a word. I'm sorry, YouTube. Please don't strike me off for it. It's a word I won't use on here myself. I will stick to grooming gangs, although I think it's something else. Anyway, I'll play it for you now. This is Tim Montgomery and Lucy Powell, MP.
I can't hear anything, Luke.
I can't. You couldn't hear it?
No.
Well, I'll say what she said. She says he asked for...
Hold on a minute now. Let me stop you there. No, I watched Laura Coon's book this morning. Is this what West Street was it? Yeah. Was sort of digging her out of a hole about?
Yes.
Everybody makes mistakes apparently, or something like that.
Yeah. What she Tim Montgomery said. We watched. We talk about the documentary Groomed, and she goes, "Oh, we're going to blow that little trumpet now. We're going to get our dog whistles out."
No, I've seen. I've seen snippets of it. I haven't really followed it, even though probably I should have. But I haven't really followed it to the extent of what you're broadcasting. But West Street did say something, I think, this morning that everybody makes mistakes, and I think her name was mentioned.
Yeah, and he said she's apologized. Now I've got her apology here. I'm going to read it out. It's going to come up on screen, and see if you think this is an apology. Mark.
Try and open it up.
In the heated discussion on AQ, I would like to clarify that I regard the issues of child exploitation and grooming with the utmost seriousness. I am sorry if this was unclear. I was challenging the political point scoring around it, not the issue itself. As a constituency MP, I have dealt with horrendous cases. This government is acting to get the truth and deliver justice. Does that sound like an apology for saying?
I can't see anywhere there. No, hang on.
She does say it once, right by there.
I'm sorry if this was unclear. That's not an apology. I'm sorry if this was unclear.
Yeah, because she says, "Oh, we're going to start on that little trumpet now and get out our dog whistles."
Well, I'm sorry if that was unclear. That's not an I'm sorry.
No.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense the way I'm wording it?
Yeah. It's a
like to me,
it's a non-apology apology, basically.
Like to me, and I'm probably going to be careful how I word this. A lot have been shown about Pakistani grooming gangs. There's other grooming gangs. It's not just Pakistan, but let's go after all of them.
Yeah.
And they all need to be brought to account. This is totally wrong. And what I understand, I've read certain things that you can never trust social media with so many things. But a 13-year-old girl I read probably last week went to the police station, had been gang raped apparently by a bunch of a grooming gang. She was arrested for being drunk.
Yeah. There was another girl, I think her name's Ellie Jones. She's been interviewed quite a lot. She was had the grooming gang sexually exploited. She had been exploited since the age of 13. When she was 17, she came from a well-to-do family as well, but she'd hidden it from her family, and it got to the point where she couldn't do it anymore. So she went and reported it. The next day, the police arrested her for blackmailing for saying that she blackmailed the person who she complained about. They arrested her for blackmail. It went on for 3 years, and they dropped it eventually, saying there's no evidence that she committed blackmail.
Wow.
And I think just as much as these people being exploited, these young girls, it wasn't always young girls, there were some boys as well, young children being exploited.
Yeah.
And they think it could be up to, there's figures ranging from 10 to 120,000 young girls over a long period of 40 odd years could have been exploited. It's as much.
I think we need to go back, Luke. I think we need to go back and ask ourselves the question, and I think the question needs to be somewhere along the region of why aren't these gangs being looked at? What reason they're not being looked at? Has somebody got something to hide? Is there something in the background that we're frightened of? Because to me, it's open and shut. These young children, lives are ruined. Lives are ruined.
Yeah. I think anybody who had the chance to stop something, to save a young person, save one of these girls like Ellie Jones, who went to the police and have pushed it aside, forgot about it, and that they're just as complicit as these gang members that have done this, who've exploited these children. There was girls arrested for solicitation or not listened to because the people were telling them, oh, they're prostitutes.
Yeah.
In the documentary, I don't know if you know who Maggie Oliver is.
No.
She's the lady that brought what happened in Rotherham to light.
Oh yes.
She worked hard, and she was taking one of these exploited girls around, and she was pointing out places where she was taken to. And she said, the girl said, "I know that car. That was the car that drove me around." And so Maggie Oliver, being that, because she was working with the police as well, she waited around the car. The girl ducked down, and they waited to see who came out. Saw who came out. He got in the car. So she took the number and ran a PNC check on it. She had Chief Superintendent come up to her and said, "Why did you run that number plate?" And she said, "Well, the girl pointed out this was a car that drove her around for police." "Oh, drop it. He's a police officer. He's under investigation for other things."
What?
And nothing ever happened to him.
Yeah.
So I think
my point. Who's hiding what?
Yeah, we know counsellors were involved. We know social services were involved. And we know police are involved not doing anything. And I think that needs to be investigated in an inquiry as well. Who did what? I don't think local inquiries, because there's no thing to compel somebody to give evidence. Whereas in a national inquiry, there is. They have to give evidence. And I think anybody who we go back, and we've gone back on Operation U-Tree, where we presenters and people in positions of power who've abused people in the past have been arrested, put in prison. People like Stuart Hall, Rolf Harris, and others. I think anybody who has covered up, ignored, or ordered people to ignore are just as guilty, and they should face justice as well. Because
guilty with association.
Any of these children who were abused and any of that, they deserve justice. Yes. And we're either a justful society or we're not.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work in it. It's like Keir Starmer at the start of the year. Everybody, when they were trying to get him to do a national inquiry, and they ended up giving 5, which is now down to 1 in Oldham. And he would say, "Oh, people are jumping on the far right bandwagon." This is not far right.
Not far right. It's an easy get out to call everything far right.
And we know they use the term far right to invoke what the Nazi Party was in the 30s and 40s, and that is the only reason to make people fear that we're going to have another world war, we're going to have another dictator, we're going to have this and that. And that's the only reason why they use far right. It's the same as they use to call people racist or bigots or anything like that, when they're not. It's like they call Nigel Farage racist, a bigot, and very far right. Oh, he doesn't want any immigration, which is actually wrong, because reforming the policy said they want a proper controlled immigration. They've got no problem with immigration, but it's got to be controlled.
Yeah.
The Conservatives used to be like that, but have failed over the last 14 years to control that immigration. They kept promising.
If I can stop you there, are you programmed for an hour? You've got 30 seconds left.
It'll keep running.
All right, because I sort of programmed myself for an hour because I got things to do as well.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll wrap it up in the next minute or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to give a last bit before we say goodbye, anything?
What do you want me to get about?
Anything you want to say, anything that's on your mind, or whether you.
Right. I tell you where. And I think this is quite topical at the moment. Actually, I'm sure you'd probably agree with the by-election result in Kevin Pyle and Kempwick Hill, Reform Pippin Labour were the incumbents. Yeah. It wasn't. I'm an independent, obviously. It wasn't ours to lose because we weren't the incumbent. You know, we put a decent show up. But I'm thinking, is this a reflection? Because the next elections now are the Senate. And I look at the way that proportional representation is now going to be the order of the day, then, if that makes sense. So I think Britain is mixed with the Vale of Glamorgan. So that means every party will probably put 6 representatives up because there's 6 seats, as my understanding. Would I be right in saying that, Dave?
Yeah. There's 6 seats. So I guess every party will try and get as many.
So I'm looking at the one MS who's helped me with residents' queries, with BCP, and he has now been dropped to number 3 on the list of Plaid Cymru, Luke Fletcher. I'd have to say he's one of the most honest, transparent, helpful MSs that I've ever come across. He'll go out of his way to help, and he'll try and get a result. He's helped me. He even apologized because he'd sent an email to the wrong person and got back in touch with the right person, come back to me. He's humble, he's genuine, he's honest. And for him to be third, people are saying, but he's not out of it. Well, I'm sorry for him to be third now, because you need to realize their voting policy. He came second on the voting list, but there's I can't remember her name. I did look. There's a woman in front of him, but because of their voting policy, she jumps over him to become number 2 on the list. Yeah. And I really don't believe Plaid Cymru will get 3 MSs in Bridgend and the Vale Glamorgan. I don't believe Labour will get 3. I struggle if Labour get 2, because I think people are now looking as an alternative to as reform. Yeah. I'm no reform voter. I categorically state that it is what it is. I've got my own way of voting. I got my own thoughts. I'm an independent county councillor and community councillor, as you know. But I think people are turning over and looking at the English results, looking at the English elections, looking at the English councils that have been taken over, looking at the English mayors. I think Labour need to be more, well, it's showing by all the negative posts. Because I follow the Labour Party because it's better to keep your enemy closer than your friends. Yeah. To see what they push out and what propaganda they push out, what negativity they push out, not what they're going to do. Yeah. It's all about running scared of everybody else, not what they're going to do to make it better. But they keep trying to say it's going to be better next time. Well, you've had 26 years of trying to make it better. Why is it going to be better next time? And I think people are sort of seeing through it and thinking, it's going to change. We need a change. And the residents, to me, what I can see of it, reading between the lines, the residents see that they see reform as the change.
Yeah, we've had Labour and Conservatives, and in Wales, we've had Plaid Cymru sharing power and help.
No, we've had Labour in control for 26 years.
Yeah. But Plaid Cymru propped them up for a couple of years earlier on.
Yeah, no, Plaid Cymru are trying to say the answer.
Yeah, and people have seen these traditional parties have failed. They've never lived up to what they promised. They've never done what they said they would. So why not give somebody else a chance now?
And I think that's what people are thinking. Yeah. I really do. Like I say, I'm no reform. I'm no reform member. I'm no reform voter. But I really do believe that that's what's on people's minds, and they think, well, they can't do any worse. Is a lot of the things that I've seen said to me. They can't do any worse than what we've got.
No, I never didn't vote for a party at the last general election. I voted for you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And
because I know you well, and I prefer to vote for the person rather than the party. And I think this is what this system is taken away in Wales now. It's
No,
taken away
no.
the person.
Well, you just said you voted for me. I've had it verified. This is just a personal thing, that I had the most votes of anybody in the UK independent that wasn't elected.
There we go.
And it's just something to be proud of, really.
Yeah, be proud. You should be proud, even if you stand up in a parliamentary election, Canterbury Council election, or community council election, get one vote. If you'll put yourself out there and knocked on doors and put leaflets through, you should be proud regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just encourage more people to have a go.
Yeah, I encourage younger people. There's people out there to help and protect you from things that happen online. They're there to guide you and keep. There's people out there who will guide you, who will tell you processes and keep you on the right side of legality when it comes to elections, because there's a lot of laws that are very, really, you have to have an address for when you put out a leaflet on the bottom.
Oh, that's the imprint. That's crucial.
The imprint.
Yeah.
People, you wouldn't think of that. You wouldn't think of something like that. And this is what independent groups do often. BCI is one of them. They help and advise, and they'll go out and deliver leaflets with you, as you've just done for Reese, as we've both done for others, and that, as you did for me last year.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It doesn't matter you're a party or independent, especially if you're young. Have a think about it. Have a good think about it. Weigh your options.
People, and some people were saying to me on the doorstep, whether it been the Reese's election or before, I've no interest in politics. Well, let me stop you there now. Everything that controls your life is about politics, whether it be education, council tax, road issues, potholes, everything that controls your life, taxes, is about politics. So you've got to have some idea and be engaged in a way in politics, because it controls your life.
Yeah. Right. We're going to end on one final thing. It's not discussion. It's a quick thing. I have been the host of 3 channels, and Mark will be the only person who's been a guest on all 3 channels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're the only one, because we interviewed you for your parliamentary on Earth Red Gorg, what I did with Amy, and the Off-Bridge Political Owl, you, Tim, and Leanne.
That's right. Yes. And Lisa Lewis was on there, and Martin Williams was on there, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think that was another live stream that you came on. But you're the only one who's going to be on all 3.
They were on there with you, weren't they? I'm sure Lisa and Martin were on there at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, they've been on there, but they weren't on Earth Red Gorg.
No, that's right.
Only you, so you're special.
Fantastic. Lukey, I'm going to have to love you and leave you, mate.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you for coming on.
You know, any opportunity you want, just give us a bell and I'll try and help out.
All right, thank you.
Take care, Luke. Ta-ra, mate.
Ta-da. Right, I'll finish up quickly here. I was saying to Mark before we come on the stream, I haven't been well recently. I wasn't well Friday. I'm not at my best. I wanted to start doing the daily uploads last Friday after the election, but I wasn't up to it, and you have to do a bit of editing. I'm in the middle of editing something called Britain on the Brink, about 1976 IMF loan that Britain had to take out, or we would have gone bankrupt. We'll look at that video come out. It'll only be about 7-8 minutes long at most. It'll come out at some point. I'm still in the middle of editing it. I might give myself a week to get over. I've got hospital on Tuesday to have something my neck done. So I might not do daily uploads this week. I will. Ollie the Owl will keep posting on the channel as much as you can. Apart from that, I'll say thank you. Again, thank you to Mark, who's gone now. And see you again hopefully next Sunday. I'll schedule a live stream, see how I feel, how I'm getting on. And I'll see you then. Thank you very much. Goodbye.